Well, hello everyone. Here to show you right here of talking about why I count on something that that somebody created right here, and a lot of times it sure seems that way. That when we do speak about gift cards a lot of times. So let's just say that if you're going to be shopping around for somebody, for something, and let's just say if it's a gift card or maybe anything such as what you call a special gift or any source of gifts or maybe any sorts of donations or something like that. But a lot of times it sure seems that way. That every time we do think about that, and you're always thinking is toward that whenever you do think about an idea and want to know too, the first thing that you want to know and find out is as to where if it works right. So a lot of times it's like you're always want to know too that if you really wanted to buy, get somebody something special a lot of times, and you're always thinking as toward, okay, yeah, what exactly is it that this person likes right here? So each time you do think about that and think as toward, okay, yeah, a lot of things like makeup products and clothes and toys or stuff like that is maybe going to remind you of your older sister, your older brother, right? But a lot of times it sure seems that way that you're going to be asking us toward, okay, yeah, that whenever it comes to why count on something I created right here. So really, could you really paraphrase that into a question and want to know as to, okay, yeah, you put that into a question right there. But want to know too is toward, okay, yeah, that what exactly is it that you're referring to? And like we probably say is to well, you can maybe refer that to like a coupon code or maybe to maybe a gift card or something like that, or it could also be a basis toward that whenever you do speak about that and think as toward okay that thought, that idea that you were coming up with was not in the instructions. So a lot of times it's like, that the older sisters maybe going to say is toward, most of the time, whenever you are filling out paperwork or any source of a document, such as an application, right, that most of the time that there's going to be what you call those requirements, and that you'll please follow the instructions. So a lot of times it's like, you look at those applications a lot of times, and they're going to have it toward it. Please follow the instructions exactly how it's worded right on the application, right? And so a lot of times it's like, every time you do think about that, and 102 that, okay, yeah, that whenever it comes to understanding about, about the basic rule, and then also whenever it comes to, requirements. And so every time you do think about that and want to know too, fresh ideas. And so let's just say that fresh ideas. And so every time we do think about fresh ideas a lot of times, and that you're always thinking is toward, okay, an idea was not in the instructions. An idea was not based on the requirements. So a lot of times it's like every time we do speak about any source of education for educational purposes, right? But a lot of times it sure seems that way that every time we do speak about that, and you're always 102 is that whenever you do ask the questions, why count on it? If you haven't heard of it, you have to hear about it first before you can count on it, because for sure that whenever you do, in order to be able to count on it for sure, that you would really need to know what it is that I'm talking about. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that whenever while you're working on something, for sure that it's going to be that way toward it. While you're working on something, and let's just say that somebody's going to go ahead and ask the questions, and like one of those questions is maybe going to be about is like toward how come you didn't go any further than that. And so like everybody else might say that, especially like on a greeting card, if you're sending somebody an invitation or a greeting card, especially that they're gonna maybe be asking you to where that, how come you didn't yeah, well, how come you didn't think about that, before or in the first place or so. So a lot of times it's like that every time you do think about that, and you're always warned, too, that whenever you do create something, by the way, it sure seems that way, that the first thing that really comes to your mind is toward, that, what, do you have to explain to everybody about what you came up with right here? And so it's like, I talk about for wrong, and then like explain why. And but let's just say that, if anybody were 102, especially if you're going to be talking to your classmates, and 102 is to where that that whenever you do, your paper does not look the same as mine, and that the work that you should be doing, according to what the instructions say on the top of the board right here, that the instructions don't match with what you're working on. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that every time we do speak about counting on something, and then before you count on something, that has to be created first, right? So it's like, every time you do think about that question right there, and a lot of times it's like, a lot of teachers and parents, by the way, that might even say too that can that question be can that really be arranged into maybe a few causes and verb vocabulary or something like that? You talk about for why count, on something that I created. And, so if I were to copy and paste, so if I were to go ahead and just copy this sentence right here, and let's just say that for any reason at all, that, I'll go ahead and copy. I know we don't really have to copy the fresh ideas, but start on a new sentence right here, and then just say paste right here. And it's like, so it's like if we were to copy and paste that, but then if I were to put on here, why count, why count on anything, or, you can just, you can say anything, why count on anything I created, when, that, or I can just say when those, when those were not originally in the instructions. So a lot of times it's like, so any teachers might even say that, if you are working on something while you're working on something, and let's just say that if you're working on something and find out that that right there was not in the instructions, it's just like like everybody else might even say that whenever we do think about that a lot of times, is that while you were working on something, maybe a database or something, while you were working on something, that if it was not included in the instructions for sure, then maybe a lot of teachers will maybe even say too that well, anything that you would like to add, anything that, I'm like, so it's like, so to me though, that whenever any teachers are going to be maybe be thinking about that question right there in 102, is that that right there, I'm like, whenever it comes to talking about counting on something, that pretty much means is toward it that the teacher and then maybe anybody else on a team, of course, they're going to be asking about it, right? So, like, let's just say if it's going to be maybe about results from a science experiment, or it could also be maybe tickets or something like that, or greeting cards or something like that, or maybe certain codes or something like that. And so really that so when we're going to be putting together a masterpiece right here, and let's just say that if it's maybe like like everybody else might even say, is toward it. If you're going to be writing a story or you're doing poetry or anything like that. And 102 is that whenever it comes to understanding about something that you created, and you're 102, that anything that approaches your mind, approaches your idea, right, and anything that approaches the attention, of maybe of a group of 5 or 10 other people, and maybe the rest of the class. And so a lot of times it sure seems that way, that every time we do speak about that in 102, that why count on something that I created, and especially if it was not in the instructions, number one. So I guess a lot of teachers might even say is toward it, really, that it's all about like. So so it seems like a lot of times it sure seems that way, that like everybody else might even say, is that really, that how many about the rest of the class, about how many of the rest of the class are going to like what they see right there. And let's just say if that's really the response by a few of the classmates is toward why are you counting on something that I created? And a lot of times it's like, well, really, that if it's really about liking what you do, or if anything, for any reason at all, that you go ahead and create something. But then also that do you think that maybe the rest of the class will need to agree? We need to agree on agreement about the expectations. So it sure seems that way, that so it's like every time you do think about that, and you're warned toward it, whenever you're working on something, for sure that you're not 100% certain that it's going to work, and you may not. You might even be thinking too that I'm not sure if it's going to work or not, or if that's a good idea or a bad idea right there. But the way I think about it, though, is like every time we do think about that in 102 is toward it, that whenever it comes to working on something, and 1 is toward, okay, that why is everybody else counting on that, even though if it was not, in the original instructions, and say, well, if they're counting on that, to be available, then for sure, like everybody else might say, that I guess another way of how you want to call it is toward it, being dependable, and even though if like everybody else might say, is toward it, if you want to go in and maybe have a conversation with your older brother or sister in 102, is that whenever you do create something that you are providing, like everybody else might even say, is toward it, whenever you do create something, you're putting something together, such as toward it, you're trying to improve something, like you're pretty much are trying to develop. I'm like, it's all about is toward you're trying to in for development, and I could put that too, is like for development, and so it's like the developing that key of information, or I can just say the source of information, or anything in particular, but developing that information. But then at the same time, it's like that information, it's not yet provided until it's not yet provided. And so any designer or any artist might even say is toward it, how often are those questions really going to be asked whenever it comes to something being in development and maybe something being created. And a lot of times it's like, yeah, well, you know how that is that whenever you do create something, it's pretty much as toward that you're pretty much you know uh, you're doing a lot of things by scratch, right? You're putting everything, a lot of things together by scratch, right? And so you're not all that sure that if this idea is really going to approach everybody else toward, okay, this is a good idea or if that's a bad idea right there. But let's just say that whenever it comes to understanding about artwork, though, and maybe whenever it does come to understanding about, about how, you know, how somebody else approaches your idea about how well that you get somebody else's attention just by is toward it's something that you were working on. And so it's like, yeah, so it's like every time you do think about that, and you're always thinking as toward yeah, what exactly is it that you're counting on. And like everybody else might say that, well, really, that number one, that if anything, if we're going to be counting on anything that you can provide for sure, that say is toward it, yeah. Well, most of the time, it's over a letter. It's a letter. Explaining. Like yeah, like a lot of times that's usually what I hear is that whenever you're going to be typing up a letter or any sort of document, right, in 102 is to where that something, it's of course it's got to be written properly too, but still that if you're going to be writing a letter or something like that, working on something important, right, and you're thinking is toward it that yeah, that whenever you do write a letter, a lot of times that you're not really like yeah, you're not really reading off of any prompt or anything like that. A lot of times that you're putting the sentences in your own words. A lot of times, but it sure seems that way. That whenever we do speak about creating something, a lot of times, and it's like yeah, while almost all the time that it seems like it works that way toward it that yeah, why count on this something. That I created right here, and that could also be a bias toward it. Whenever it comes to that, I, while I was working on it. On a work of art, yeah. Well, while I was working on it, or it could, yeah, you could also be typing a letter, and let's just say that, anything that you're trying to work on in 102 is that, okay, yeah, that but for the most part, I can put on here too that, for what works best, and that's usually what I say too, is that for what works best. And so a lot of times, every time you do think about that too, by the way, for what works best, and I can maybe put like, yeah, can that really be, could you put like maybe a comma right here, and then along with the exclamation point, for what works best, and something like that. But still, every time you do, you think about being a good writer and of course a storyteller and everything, and a lot of times it sure seems that way is toward it, yeah, that while you're working a lot of times, but it's like yeah, why are you even counting on this here, that whenever you don't you're not quite sure what it is, but still, so it's like a lot of times it sure seems that way that whenever you're going to be working on something, let's just say if it's during your spare time, while you're working on something, you're not following any directions or anything like that. You're not really going by any rules or boundaries or restrictions or anything like that. So that's why it sure seems that way, that every time you do think about being creative, a lot of times, that you're mainly are thinking about the things that you really, yeah, that that you find real interesting, and maybe thinking about is toward yeah, for the most part, that it's like yeah, whenever it comes to creative writing, right? But it's like 102 is that when we do speak about counting on something that you create, and most of the time it sure seems that way. Most of the time it's like, yeah, well, number one, though, it's about an idea that you think about is toward, hey, I have an idea. Let's go ahead and I'm like, yeah, order some movie tickets or invite the group to go to the movies or something like that, or let's have a meeting about this, and then maybe let's get everybody to agree. Yeah, it seems like to me that that's usually what it is. Trying to get everybody to agree to go, meet at this place, go to an event or something. So yeah, so a lot of times it's like, everybody else might even say is toward it, yeah. Do you think that you have better luck with a lot of that? Whenever it comes to trying to get everybody, trying to get people to agree on what how they want to celebrate and what they want to do so far as celebrating or maybe getting together, maybe for the holidays or for the special occasions or anything like that. But on the other hand, it's like every time we do think about that and want to know too is that somebody's going to be asking a question as to where yeah, that yeah, those greeting cards right there, where those come from, and want to know is to where are you going to be sending them out for next year, and so yeah, so it's like, so every time we do think about that, and you're always thinking too is toward it, especially yeah, if it's candy. And I know, like everybody else might say, is that why create? I'm like, yeah, we can count on something that you create. If there was not any instructions, and I can just say, yeah, if I, candy bars. Everybody else might say that, well, candy bars. I'm like, you want to go ahead and use candy bars for an example, just because that any gift baggies or anything like that, gift exchange candy bars. I'm like, yeah. So it's like everybody else would say is to where whose idea was that to include candy bars and candy bars, or maybe anything about maybe Super Savers passes, or maybe cotton candy, cotton candy or something like that. And that's why it sure seems that way every time you do think about that. And 102 is toward it, yeah, that yeah, you're treating somebody special for number one. You're treating somebody special, right? And a special treatment. But I tell you one thing, everybody, that yeah, special, special. I say that almost all the time. What do I mean by that? Well, special attention, and usually, yeah, that a lot, most of the time it's the students, by the way, students, or maybe if you just recently got promoted or something like that for the job. But let's just say that on average that if you're going to be thinking about for special right here, so it's like, yeah, that whenever I do, whenever I say special, I mean by is toward that, yeah, that normally that somebody, not everybody, would be being very nice. I'm like, yeah, I can put that in the definition right here. Talk about for very, very nice and sweet. So it's like, yeah, especially around the spring, very nice and sweet. So it's like, yeah, that, so every time you do think about that in 102 is that, okay, yeah, that, even though if you don't really know everybody there in the group, or maybe if you don't really know everybody there, there at the party or wherever you're going to meet up with a few people and a few, and 102 is that, yeah, that, whenever you're going to be, receiving any sorts of special treatment, though a lot of times it sure seems that way, that is that really kind of like 102 is okay, why, well, what's with all the special treatment and all that, but still that so a lot of that, and I'm sure like a lot of that can probably be explained over the fact that that much a lot much is appreciated from the hard work that you put into something. And so let's just say if that special attention came by is toward it, goes by the hard work. Hard work that you put into something. And so really, what is work? What does that usually mean? And I'll even tell everybody here that when we talk about hard work, and so anybody might even say is that hard work pretty much means is to where that a lot of that work and quite a bit of that work that took a lot longer than what you thought, but still that a lot of that work based on but still. But on the other hand, that every time we do speak about counting on something, and then whenever you create something, what it pretty much means is to where that whenever you're going to be working on something, and let's just say that if there's an idea, if it works, and most of the time that's usually what I say is that whenever you're going to be working on something and thinking is toward okay, yeah, that why is why is the rest of the class, or why is the company counting on this, even though before I'm like, yeah, before that before I got that promotion and all that, before this idea, I'm like, yeah, before it came in development in 102, but still. So a lot of times it's like every time you do think about that source of that topic and that question, a lot of times, and you're always thinking is toward it, yeah, that whenever you do whenever you do create something, a lot of times it sure seems that way, that whenever you do create something, when it's based on creations, right, and a lot of times it's like, yeah, that creations are basically like brainstorming ideas. They come from the mind, right? You're brainstorming ideas. So whenever you brainstorm ideas, you're not really following the directions. Like everybody else might say, is that every time you do hear that, you might think as toward well, really, you're not really following any rules or instructions. Whenever you do brainstorming, you really are just thinking and maybe thinking about the suggestions and all that. So it's like every time you do think about that. And 102 is that when I say, why count on something that I created? And so a lot of times it's like, teachers might even say is toward, well, really, that, the reason why that we are counting on this something that you came up with and, that you provided is because, is to where if you're, I'm like, yeah, if you're willing to share it, I'm like, yeah, so a lot of times it's like everybody else may say is to where it's all part. And that's the part of sharing. It's a part about sharing, and so like a lot of teachers might even say is toward it's all about sharing, and then being generous and kind and all that. But everybody else might say is toward it. So yeah, it's like you want to know too that whenever we do talk about sharing, but still that. But really, do we think that maybe that could also be put into another point of perspective whenever it comes to understanding about creating something, and whenever it does come to understanding about, why it's important now, just to provide, what you created. And so with me, though, that I just really think is toward it whenever it comes to putting something together a lot of times, and at the time you're thinking is toward why are you why is the rest of the class counting on something that I created? And like well, really, that number one, if they can all agree that they find it real useful, and then they ask you to provide that the next time, and so if it's like especially if it's useful, but still. But on the other hand, that when we do speak about special attention, though, a lot of times it's like you're thinking is that special attention. With a special attention, it's like say well, really that that they're to be kind and sweet and nice and sweet, and want to know too is that going easy on the person. But anyway, but the way I think about you. But on the other hand, that it's like 102 is that whenever it comes to understanding about the things for what's created, it's like say, yeah, well, really, that and just say is to word it, for what you learned, from based on that creation.